make me itch. You burn my skin. Still you I want to hold. You're so sick, you make me itch. I toss and I'm tired and my fingers twitch. The thought of you, it burns my skin to the bone. And still you I want to hold. Take it back, too much to unpack. That hate in your head and heart that you lack. The thought of you, it burns my skin to the bone. And I can't leave you alone. You're so sick, you're selfish, it's endless. Still you I want to hold. I miss how we used to be weightless. And I can't leave you alone.
Hello, guys. Crazy stuff happening today. Something that I don't think any of us really even contemplated happening before we all woke up this morning, and yet here we are. Guys, the APT case is done. For now, anyway. And City actually won, which I didn't really think that would happen at all. To be honest. So what we're going to be doing today is talking about the judgment, of course. What have City won in? What were they not successful in? What are APTs done for? Is this the end of the world? Can City just spend £1 billion tomorrow by, by exploiting sponsors? No, is the answer to that, TLDR. But we're going to be discussing that. Let me know, guys, do you want me, just in case you guys want to do some reading yourself, do you guys want me to drop the judgment in the live chat? It is a 175-page document, so I can totally appreciate. I'll drop it in just in case, because some of you guys might want to read it yourself, and then maybe you haven't had access to it yet. But there it is. As I say, it is. It's very long and very. I don't want to use the word boring, but that's probably quite an apt word there, to be honest. And I want to read it again, to be honest. So just so I'm comfortable and confident with everything, because I haven't read it as much as I would like to have done. I have read it, but not as much as I want to. So that's going to be the situation. The link is there. Hopefully you guys can access it. Leave a like on the video as you are entering, by the way. That would be very, very lovely of you chaps. Just because. Yes, so we as I say, we're going to get into the backgrounds. We'll have like a background refresher. I feel like when this first happened, like a few months ago, I did like a stream where we talked about it. So we'll be discussing that. Just like the generalness of it, and also again what it means and all that stuff, that sort of thing. If you want like a dummies version, then what City have done, again I'll pop this in the chat, what City have done is they've just dropped a very specific page from it, which is quite funny. It's like just like the main judgment of it, basically like the sort of conclusion, which is quite funny, and it's obviously the most damning section of it from a Premier League perspective. That's what like City have dropped. So if you do want to do that, that's absolutely fine. It is important to note that this isn't like a sort of like slam dunk from City, and that every single thing they argued succeeded. The vast majority of what they argued didn't succeed. But the point is that with these sorts of matters, if you could even get one over the line, then you've technically won. So that is a massive thing in respect of itself. The fact that even if it was only one thing that City were proven to have been victorious in, that is pretty significant, to be honest. And again, City threw a lot at the door. This is what you do in law. You throw a lot, see what sticks. Of course, a lot of it's not going to stick, but in fairness, some of it did, which is really, really interesting. And it's all just a mess, to be honest. I mean, if you do read this yourself, the procedural administration that's currently in place is so unfit for purpose. It is it is amazing, to be honest with you. Let me just very briefly read out like what City officially won in, again, whatever terminology we want to use, and then we'll get into it more specifically. Where is it? So I can't find it. Why can't I find it? There we go. So City challenged the decision on the basis, this is in reference to First Abu Dhabi Bank. So it looks like there were three main transactions that were being disputed here. One was with Etihad, one was with First Abu Dhabi Bank, and the other one was with Emirates Palace. So this one in respect to First Abu Dhabi Bank, the challenge where it was successful. Challenged the decision on the basis it was reached in a procedurally unfair manner. This is in terms of the fair market value situation, in that the Premier League did not provide City with the full data bank transactions entered into by other clubs, which the board referred to. That challenge has been upheld. So yes, so procedurally unfair is what was decided there. And then in respect of the other one, which was upheld, here we go. This is at 601, same transaction. City alleges there was an unreasonable delay of many months and or delay contrary to the Premier League rules. We've held, this is the judgment, we have held there was an unreasonable delay of about 3 months and therefore a breach. Just for context, the official Premier League rules, I believe, say that you should be able to resolve these things within around 10 days, or at least like the first thing, and then there'll be like another review sort of thing. So the fact that this is it's not even like it's not the fact it's like a few days over, the fact it's a few months over is pretty interesting. And also when you consider, like, in the world of business, it's a very fast-paced environment, you know, something which could have been entered into now, not being entered into later down the line because of administration issues. I mean, deals break in business with that sort of timeline, so it's not an insignificant, it's not just like an inconvenience of a bit of a delay. These are pretty significant delays in respect of timescale and impact on City. And in respect to the Emirates Palace one, City alleged there was an unreasonable delay of many months, contrary to the same rule. We've held there was an unreasonable delay of about 2 months, and therefore a breach of Premier League Rule E.64. So that is officially what City have won with. Get your thoughts in the chat, guys, to say we will go through it now. That was just like the summation of what City actually won with today. So to do with procedural unfairness and time delays is the thing. More shot of West Ham signing with them, says Nitin. Yeah, well, it's outrageous, isn't it? Asia's as happy times. City very bullish, but APT assessed by the Premier League has not been overruled. Yeah, we'll get into that. Douglas. This is not related to the 115 at all. Totally separate matter. So don't think it's anything like that. I think in terms of, like, from a City perspective, the only thing, like, for me is that it's just provided evidence that the Premier League are incredibly inept, I guess is the correct term, because they can't even follow their own rules. So maybe that gives City some hope there. But outside of that, there is no correlation there. Bad days, Brian. So let's drink those tears, says Staffy Dave. Crazy about, there's apparently going to be a Pep extension as well. If that happens, oh my word, it'll be the best day ever. Goodness me. Thank you. Yes, this is my Tom and Jerry jumper. Big up to you. Big up to you. I've been told City were guilty of 115's Premier League, otherwise when the charge does. Yeah, I mean, that was always like a weird thing. That was always a really weird thing, wasn't it? That the fact that there is a case being brought means that therefore must be the case. But when we did it, it was really weird. So let's get into the background of it. We'll get into the judgment, and then we'll get into the end product, not end product, end impact, effect, whatever terminology you want to use this. So very briefly, because I did a whole stream a few months ago on what APTs are and all that shenanigans, so feel free to go back and watch that. But in sum, TLDR, associated party transactions, that's basically where the Premier League considers essentially anything to do with the UAE as related to Manchester City, because Manchester City are obviously owned by Sheikh Mansour, who's a big boy in the UAE. So essentially they consider anything to do with the UAE to be a related party transaction. That That's what we mean by that. And it does make sense, because, or an associated party transaction, APT, whichever. And it makes sense why you would want to have some sort of regulation there. I'm not one of those people who's like, yeah, just let them spend whatever they want, because I think that for the sake of competitiveness, you do want there to be some sort of regulation. Otherwise, it would just be like a wild west of mental spending, which I don't think is really fair, given how much money some clubs have. So it makes sense for that to be in the Premier League rules with the profit and sustainability regulations. That makes total sense. When they were brought in 2021, there was a denial by the Premier League at the time, I believe, that this had anything to do with Newcastle's takeover. They were going to be bringing in these regulations anyway, so don't even worry about it. It's wrong to call it the Newcastle regulations, but we all knew at the time, like, if we had a brain, we all knew that it was to do with that. And it is so funny, because reading this judgment, there is literally, like, I'm sure there's literally an email. Where was it? I think it was around 60-ish, 0.60. There's literally like an email where they say, well, there were no formal discussions about bringing in these sorts of rules, but yeah, we were always considering them. Oh yeah, I'm so sure, I'm so convinced. And the timeline is so funny, because it's like Newcastle gets taken over, and then within days there is an email, like Premier League correspondence, talking about, yeah, we need to bring in some rules ASAP. So the idea that this was never just about that is, it was always bollocks, but it's really funny. Here it is. So on the 7th, so for 5 days, on the 7th of October 2021, Newcastle was purchased by the PIF. On the 12th of October, Premier League received an email on behalf of this club and 10 other clubs in the league, email giving notice of a vote in 5 days' time to introduce a short-term ban on any related party transactions of any kind. This rule should have the widest possible definition of a related party. So that is really, really funny. And they even specifically mentioned the Gulf region, which is quite funny. So the fact that they were trying to suggest that it wasn't correlated was mental. Now, at the time, City said, whoa. You keep doing rules like this, we will be challenging them. Just an FYI, we reserve judgment to challenge these legally. A few years later, there were some amended APTs, and City then challenged. This led to the situation that we are now in. So I've dropped the document ID, and we are going to be discussing that today. If you want to read it, I'm going to try to give a very brief overview of everything. Again, I do want to read it again myself. I just had a very busy day with lots of shows and whatnot, but hopefully I can provide some sort of insight into it. Obviously, you guys can read it if you would wish to. That email was allegedly Daniel Levy. It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, so it is just really funny that, again, they tried at the time to say this has got nothing to do with Newcastle. We were going to do this anyway. And 5 days after Newcastle got taken over, they send an email to the Premier League going, please, can we do something about that? Thank you. Yeah, so the amended ones happens. City go, not having any of this. We think it's unlawful. That's led us into that situation. And it was so funny because at the time, it was seen as an outrage in like the mainstream media, and indeed just in social media, an outrage that Man City would dare challenge the Premier League. You know, you signed up to these rules, you should just be happy to accept them, and it's vile that you are challenging the Premier League. But the only argument at the time was, well, if the rules are unlawful, then they are unlawful, and therefore, why would anyone want an unlawful rule? Surely we want to have rules which abide by the rule of law in this country. Would that not make sense? Question mark. So that was always a really weird thing, and it's just so funny that I personally didn't expect us to get any victories on the APT. So the fact that we got a few, and there might be some repercussions for the Premier League in respect to damages potentially, is really, really funny. And there's also the added cherry on top that the Premier League breached its own rules, which is hilarious, to be honest. Like, you actually can't write this. The level of incompetence is staggering. So that's the background to it. Now, I've outlined, what City won on, but there was a lot that City didn't win on. It is worth noting that from a who won perspective, City objectively won, because you only need to prove one to get the victory. But there was a lot, again, that they didn't win on, which we will get into. But in respect of like a summary of what happened, so as I mentioned earlier, there were 3 key deals where this is related to. Emirates Palace, First Abu Dhabi Bank and the Etihad Aviation Group, the Etihad deal. There were three being discussed here. And on every single one, it's a similar timeline. So, and this was my issue when we did that stream earlier. I was saying, well, these rules, there's a lot of scope for delay. And that was something that we discussed all those months ago. So that was even assuming that the official guidelines within the rules were followed, never mind if they weren't followed, and that was clearly the case here. So let me get it up. I think it's First Abu Dhabi Bank, which was first up. Let me see if I can identify it. Yes, here we go. So First Abu Dhabi Bank. So this was originally entered into with City in April of 2023, and the amount of like delays and back and forth administration that has to be done for these fair market value assessments, it just sort of like puts into question for me the whole practicality and validity of the entire system. It's just ridiculous because, again, commercial dealings have so many different moving parts, and what could be a good deal in 1 month might not be the exact same in a few months' time. So it is amazing how long it takes. But there was this independent company called Nielsen, who are basically in charge of producing fair market value reports. The Premier League hires Nielsen to produce them, and then they provide advice on whether it's above fair market value or not. And that indeed did happen. So it went to Nielsen, and they said that this First Abu Dhabi Bank deal is evidently above fair market value. The report recommended that the board decide the transaction was evidently not at fair market value, which then means that City have got to go back and provide more documentation to show why First. Sorry, who is this again? I keep forgetting the names. First Abu Dhabi Bank. They've now got to provide more documents to say, no, we do think it is at fair market value. It's all massive back and forth. We've got to provide another determination and blah, 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 blah. They've got to provide all the board's reasoning, emails across, and this is just taking a period of months and months, which is obviously what was City's key issue with all of this. And that's the same thing with every single one. There was a final determination for that one, which said it did not exceed. Oh, here we go. So yes, so due to what Nielsen understood to be an oversight within the regulatory team, the Premier League's final determination was only issued on the 13th of November. So City entered into this agreement, or attempted to enter into this agreement, in April of 2023, and it wasn't decided until November of 2023. That was when the final determination letter was received to City by the Premier League. So the Premier League's final determination letter was only issued in November 2023, however many months after the fact. The final determination was the transaction was not at fair market value, and as such, City was required to vary the transaction again. So from the period of March through to November, all this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, they've still been told that, yeah, it's still not at fair market value. And that was only one of them. And then in respect of Emirates Palace, I believe the conclusion was that it was ultimately at fair market value. Yes, so that was attempted to be entered into in April of 2023. April of 2023. And then April of 2024. So a year had passed, and then the final determination was provided. The board considered the final determination and decided to revise its earlier decision and determined that the transaction was not above fair market value. So a year has passed in the case of this deal just for them to decide that actually it was at fair market value, which is a staggering level of ineptitude and incompetence in my view. A year had passed, only for them to decide that actually it was at fair market value. Staggering. In respect of Etihad, now this one took, I think maybe, did this take the absolute longest or maybe not? They tried to enter that into November of 2023, and again, the amount of months this took was mental. It's once again the same old story. It's the back and forth, this one more so than everyone else. And I guess I would hope that this just brings into question the whole practicality of the system. It just needs a total rethink, because you can't have this amount of blockages at an administrative level, because as we discussed, it leads to negative commercial consequences for the clubs who are trying to do it. So that's sort of like the background and the main gripe of why City are concerned, because if you introduce these, in their view, are arbitrary rules, then you are allowing for all these blockages and all these stoppages. So that's why City are obviously incredibly frustrated in that respect. But again, City did fail on a lot. So let's discuss that now. So City challenged the APT rules and the amended rules as being restrictive of competition. But that challenge did fail. We hold that the exclusion of shareholder loans from the APT rules are unlawful, and that was another thing that City did succeed on, in fairness. City challenged the APT rules as being procedurally unfair. We hold that City's inability to comment upon the comparable contraction data relied upon by the Premier League before the Premier League determines whether a transaction is at fair market value is procedurally unfair, but all other challenges fail. Okay, so again, City got a slight victory there. City challenged the Premier League's decision that the Etihad transaction was evidently not at fair market value, alleging the Premier League misdirected itself in its interpretation and application of the rules, but that challenge did fail. City challenged the decision on the basis that, in several respects, it was reached in a procedurally unfair manner. That challenge has failed, save in two respects. Namely, the Premier League did not give City an opportunity to respond to the benchmarking analysis, and City was not provided with underlying data. Okay, and that was what they did succeed in. City challenged the decision, the basis that the Premier League's decision was unreasonable, but that failed. City alleged there had been unreasonable delay with the Etihad one, but that had failed, I'm guessing because it was such a complicated deal. So that's maybe why they were allowing all those months to go by. And in respect to First Abu Dhabi Bank, City challenged the Premier League decision that the transaction was not at fair market value, alleging the Premier League misdirected itself, but that failed. City challenged the decision on the basis it was reached in a procedurally unfair manner. The Premier League did provide, and sorry, that was the one they did succeed on. City challenged the decision on the basis the Premier League acted unreasonably, that failed. Finally, City alleged there was an unreasonable delay, and that was an unreasonable delay of 3 months. And then in terms of the Emirates Palace, again, there was that unreasonable delay. So there was a fair bit the City didn't win on, of course, but again, there were some significant areas where they did win on, and it will mean that there will have to be some sort of amendment to these rules. It's not, and that's the thing, it's not going to be entirely scrapped. Some people think that now City can do whatever they want and APTs are no longer a thing. That's not the case. APTs are still going to be within the Premier League rules, but there is clearly going to have to be a restructuring, and there's going to have to be some amendments to it, because City have illustrated that some elements are not fit for purpose in respect of the time that was taken, and also in respect of some elements of procedural and structural unfairness, which I think is maybe the most damning one for me, and doesn't really seem fair. Again, like one of them, that second one, they tried to enter it in April of 2023, and it wasn't until April of 2024 that it finally got approved. That to me just screams incompetence, surely. Let me know, guys, if you've got any questions or thoughts on it so far. Am I making myself clear? Is this even interesting? Let me know, guys. Please let me know in the live chat using your fingers to tell me. We do have over 200 people here, which is watching. We need at least 115 likes. You know the drill. Come on, lads. Get it up here. Get it up here. Do you think these were City's main 2 arguments, says Linny? So, I don't know, because I haven't seen Man City's, like what they actually submitted. I've obviously only been able to see the judgment, so I don't actually know. I would imagine that City probably would have wanted basically the entire thing to be scrapped, but that obviously hasn't happened. So if that was their main one, you might say, well, they weren't successful in that. But again, I think the fact they got any success is pretty substantial, because once again, it just, even from a sort of moral perspective, it just raises the question of ineptness from the Premier League, from Masters in particular. And there's also a section in here which basically is very damning in respect of how quickly the Premier League were happy to enact these rules and didn't really consider, or rather didn't have, what's the term, concrete advice that these were concrete, definitely not unlawful rules. And they were just willing to go ahead with it anyway, which is, again, it just screams of poor governance in that respect. What's the Prem? Oh, yeah, so Aptus, hopefully we have addressed that now. So again, this isn't going to be a total disregarding of the rules. It's also worth noting, though, that even if every single rule here got scrapped, the UEFA still has rules where you've got to abide by their rules in respect to fair market value as well. And not just for APTs, just for every single deal, it seems. So people need to get out of their head that had City won today, it would have been the end of everything, because UEFA rules still exist. Shane West Ham testified against us, says Jono. It is interesting the clubs who opted to support with City and those who opted not to. Some very, very unusual clubs there. Like, I don't know what like Bournemouth and Wolves are doing. Like, who invited you? What are you up to, guys? Let's say he signed. Oh my god, can you imagine if he signs, man? Can you imagine if Guardiola signs an extension? I've sort of accepted that Pep's leaving, so... Oh my god. Should City sue the Premier League or not? We'll get into what are the potential repercussions in that respect. City have to sue the Premier League. I like the sentencing was worded unlawful act of the Premier League. I mean, yeah, City's statement is incredibly... what's the term? What is the term? Aggressive? It's very... I mean, we obviously knew that, Man City and the Premier League, we know that they don't like each other because literally they're suing one another. But my word, the wording is incredibly strong and argumentative. The APT rules have been found to be unlawful. The tribunal found that both the original APT rules were in violation of UK competition law. The Premier League was found to have abused its dominant position. The rules were found to be discriminatory in how they operate. We'll get into the shareholder loans in a moment. Yeah, incredibly powerful statements. I think it's probably a bit too argumentative, to be honest. But hey, they went for it. They went for it. It's a massive victory for City. The fact that they got any, I said that on the on Mo's show today, and I said it on the top 6 today, that it is a massive victory. No matter how small it may seem, the fact that there is any victory here, the fact that there's going to have to be any amendment is a massive victory. 100%. 100%. This level of back and forth is a very poor as a process. If an assessment agency requires further information, I think they should request that in the first instance. Well, it shouldn't be taking a year, should it? No matter how complicated the deal is, especially if the end decision is the exact same as what it should have been originally. That, to me, again, just screams incompetence. And it's almost like a thing of... It's so... Again, I accept there has to be some, and I want there to be some sort of regulation, but it brings into question the whole thing of how do you even decide what is fair market value? Because I could reason that, that just might be a very good deal, or it might be a bad deal in terms of negotiation. You don't know what's going to happen a few years down the line. It's all very subjective. So to put an objective or try to quantify in an objective way is almost impossible. And I think this has just illustrated it. And hopefully there will be some sort of amendment which makes it an easier process or a more transparent and less impossible process. But I still don't even know how you really do that. It's incredibly tricky to do this. So that was, no matter what we think about it, that was not actually proven to have been upheld. So that's not, even though I do think, if you ask me what my personal opinion on it is, I do think it's pretty obvious that there is a direct targeting and a direct discrimination here, clearly, in terms of it might not be direct discrimination, but it's certainly indirect. Obviously, that's not been upheld or addressed, but that would be my personal take on that. I'd like to go on the overlap, Jono, but hey, I'm not impressive enough to be invited on, I'm afraid. I'd like to know why the leagues delayed the release of this report as it came as it was announced on the 15th of September, they're hoping it'll be missed in the international break. I don't actually know. Maybe there was like an official, period of there's got to be a certain period of time before it can be released. I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest. Doesn't affect it at all, Jay. Totally separate, totally different. Yeah, definitely idea. Definitely, yeah. Rules are slightly adjusted. You still can't have overinflated sponsorship deals. Yeah, but to be fair, I thought it was YMCA then. City wouldn't have been able to do that anyway because of the UEFA rules. So that was never a thing. That was never a thing. To be honest with you. Strong semi, yeah, very powerful. Again, I would say too powerful. I think it goes too far the other way, but hey, they've gone for it, to be honest. They've gone for it. A victory for City, but not for the future of the league. Well, it does raise it into... Wait, is that Dan? Is that my Dan? My Dan. Is that Dan from the Rational League? BDB Dan? Is that my boy? Just because the profile picture, that's you, isn't it? Am I being stupid? You're a Chelsea fan, Dan, right? Let me know. Am I being stupid? I think that's my boy, Dan. That's my boy. Anyway, what were we saying? Sorry, I got distracted by your face. A victory for City, but not for the future of the league. I think if anything, it's probably going to be... I mean, it should be good for the league in that it's now an unlawful rule, which has now been addressed. But again, it shouldn't... In terms of like scaremongering, it won't mean that, City can do anything because they wouldn't have been able to do that anyway. So I think that's all good. Clubs, yeah, there's going to be an emergency meeting as well. Crazy. As I live down the road from Mullany, I'm disappointed. Wolves testified against us. Yeah, absolutely. Why is there the other company? And this is also me as well. Now again, I don't think this was challenged by the I don't think this was challenged by City, but this was something that I brought up all those months ago. I'm of the view that it's a very weird situation that there is one company which gets to decide what is fair market value and what isn't. I'm not saying that Nielsen are not doing a good job because, City have employed them in the past. So I don't think that they are unfair, but what I would say is that it's a very weird situation that there's only one independent company that you can pick from, and that's like who the Premier League pick. Again, I'm not saying that they do a bad job by any means, but I'm pretty sure UEFA gives you like 5 to 7 names. It's very odd. It is a very odd situation. So, yeah. Straight Checker says, do you find it ironic Ralph fans say City Club don't generate their money while Arsenal has shareholders? Well, let's get on to that shareholder loan thing now, shall we? So that was, I guess, another key. That was like the main point that City won on, really, or one of those points. In addition to the procedurally unfair manner about the Etihad transaction, for example. One of the things which came out of this was, and this is in the judgment, the APT rules are unlawful on account of being in breach of the Competition Act because they exclude from their scope shareholder loans. Which is really interesting. Now, there was a communication before one of the main votes which basically explored the question of should shareholder loans be included in these fair market value calculations. Now, I don't know what the argument would be for... In fact, can I search this? I can. I'm pretty sure the word was investment. If I search this when I saw it. Here we go. Right. The recommendation was that shareholder loans were to be excluded from the definition of related party transactions. This was to continue to encourage investment. That is the official reasoning. Now, I think that is mental. Because, I don't know why the Premier League just doesn't do UEFA's rules, because UEFA does consider shareholder loans to be included in terms of, a related party transaction. So I've no idea where the justification is that this shouldn't be included. The official justification is it's to continue to encourage investment, which totally seems at odds with everything that we are being told about in respect of Manchester City. It's very unusual, and when you also consider that these loans, some of them, and lots of people talk about Arsenal, but there's lots of clubs which are being impacted by this. And I think Stefan quote tweeted it actually. Go follow Stefan Borson if you haven't already on Twitter. He quote tweeted someone who did some really good work on this. Let's have a look. So this is from an account called Subprime Goals. So shout out them because they've done the work on this. So clubs that currently are impacted by this in respect of, shareholder loans. Arsenal, Brighton, Bournemouth, Chelsea, and Leicester all have, as things stand, being impacted by it. If I can find the page, yes, there it is. So, is that where it is? No, wait, where is it? Well, there it is. So this is before that email being sent, which is again very odd. So they were discussing whether interest-free loans from related parties should require it to be in line with fair market value. Mr. Herbert's recollection is that it was not the purpose or function of the profit and sustainability rules to prohibit or limit investment by owners in clubs, provided it was done in a way that was direct, open, and transparent. So it was agreed that the proposal should exclude interest-free loans as requiring reassessment at fair market value, which I don't really get, to be honest. It seems very unusual to do that. Now, a lot's been made of that. I think it's important to note that this is much of a muchness, because I don't know the full procedure of how you turn these loans, whether they are interest-free or not, into equity. But this has happened before by football clubs where they just do that. So, people saying, oh, now Arsenal are in breach of FFP or whatever, I think those people are just scaremongering. Arsenal are going to be fine. I think it's more of an interesting thing. There is no repercussion of it. It's just more interesting that they're now going to have to do that. Again, it's really, really interesting that this was ever agreed. I don't understand what the official justification is of these loans. Just shouldn't be considered for fair market value. If everything else is being considered, it doesn't, what's the term? Doesn't really help the cause of those who think that there isn't a sort of concerted effort or by some against others, when clearly there is. And again, just going back to the Newcastle emails, that clearly does illustrate there is something going on. It's very unusual, but there we go. Jay says, Forest couldn't command the same fee from sponsors as Liverpool. The idea of fair market value is more quantifiable than you've made out. To an extent, Jay, but again, there is it's not. I would argue that there are too many subjective elements to try to pin it down to an exact science. It's very, very hard to value companies, and it's very, very hard. I think maybe even harder to value commercial dealings. What I would like to have happen now, this is probably unlawful, isn't it? But what might be the most simple solution is, right, the upper limit for a sleeve sponsor is £20 million, and the upper limit for a shirt sponsor is £50 million. Now, that's probably not allowed, but something like that would just be nice and easy, because then there's no question marks about whether it's fair market value or not. And then, if clubs want to pay the maximum, then they can do that. But if they don't, then everyone's in the same boat. Now, whether that's right, whether that's even lawful, I don't know. But just to make it black and white and clear for everyone, it would just make it easier. It would make the whole thing nicer. Yeah. You can argue that it appears fair market value for everything given the level of club we are now and where we wouldn't be where we are now without the investment, but still, and that's a very interesting point. Dan aired me. Is that actually Dan or what? The ruling also stated the way the league handles shareholder loans was discriminatory. Yeah, and that's just what we've discussed there. So if I just go back to the judgment for a moment. Yeah, so the APT rules were unlawful and counts being in breach of the Competition Act because they exclude shareholder loans. They exclude shareholder loans, and because yes, and that was the original APT rules and the amended APT rules, which is very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. It is mental indeed. Today's news has opened a can of worms. Islands are not interested. I never said yours were Dial Square. I said that it was said in the rules that at the time that they would consider interest-free loans to not be a part of it. So I didn't say that in fairness to me. I don't know if you were referring to someone else, though, to be fair. A lot of fair market value is done with models. It's more about a fight about the input to those models. And the fact that there was a back and forth, which lasted a year, and the end result was the exact same, tells me that clearly, as things stand, it's not fit for purpose. So hopefully this will bring to light a desire by every club to want to, I don't know whether you can streamline the process or just make it better, to be honest. That'll be a thing. This emergency meeting that's been called by the Premier League, I'd love to be a fly on the wall. Well, I expect and I imagine that they'll just be discussing, right, well, this has got to be amended. And that's the thing, they're going to have to almost go back to square one in respect of, well, they'll have to amend everything from the ground up. But it's not a case of they will go in their entirety, but there will have to be massive changes clearly, because the whole way things are valued and calculated is going to have to be amended, because there are clubs who are currently, as things stand, the calculations are off. So now whether those clubs turn those loans just directly into equity, which is not an uncommon thing to have happen, then, but some clubs might not do that, because it's not just a case of you snap your fingers and you do it. Some clubs might not want to do that. So it is very... There's still a lot which we don't know about, because obviously we'll have to wait to see what the response is from the clubs and what the actual new rules are, how much needs to be taken out, how much just need to be tweaked slightly. And then obviously we'll get into City's potential... we'll get into potential repercussions for the Premier League in that respect. Caught with their pants down playing unlawful in a discriminatory manner. Dial Square, hello mate. What does KSE mean, mate? I've seen that a lot. What does KSE mean? Can you let me know, please? Is that no, I don't actually know. I don't know what it is. But yeah, so as things stand, these loans will impact Arsenal, but once again, it sounds like they will just be able to quite easily turn that into equity, which is, again, not an uncommon thing at all. Oh, yes, what are the Newcastle... So we discussed this at the top of the show, but essentially, where was it? Oh, we had it earlier, didn't we? I've lost a paragraph now, lads. Here we go. So, on the 7th of October, Newcastle was acquired by PIF. On the 12th of October, 5 days later, an individual and 10 other clubs emailed the Premier League saying that there should be a vote in 5 days' time to introduce a short-term ban on related party transactions of any kind. It should have the widest possible definition of a related party transaction when applied to companies like those in the Gulf region. was that email, which again didn't really have a bearing on the judgment, but it's just so blatant in its targeting. If I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be fuming. I would be livid. And I'm actually more surprised that it's City who are pushing this case rather than rather than Newcastle. But there you go. It's, as far as I can tell, that is the most deliberate targeting that you can come up with. And the fact that they claimed and suggested that that wasn't the case, I think is laughable, to be honest. Again, doesn't really have any bearing on the judgment, but it is just more funny than anything else. That literally 5 days after it, they go, yeah, specifically this region of the world. It's very interesting. Let's just say that. Hello, Bevel. How you doing? Imagine paying for the Super Mini release clause using the compensation. Can you imagine? Should have changed it weeks ago, trying to find the back door. Hello, the Villa fan. Thanks. Transfer windows will now be much better for us. I don't know if it'll be that simple, Villa fan, but it is certainly interesting, that's for sure. The summary. Oh, we're talking about the judgment and the impact of it. IDK pumping money into the club that did not naturally generate the cash. Well, it's not uncommon for owners to, purchase equity in a club, through like through shares or whatever. But there is a limit into how much can be done, and it can't be done to circumvent like PSR rules or whatever in terms of like losses. So, Cronky, thank you, Dial Square. So Cronky Sports Entertainment. Okay, so yeah, okay, right. So the owner basically, understood. Is that the official owner of Arsenal? Is that right? If you could confirm that, Dial Square, that'd be lovely. Thank you. You could turn loans into equity as long as you have. There we go. Right, yeah. So that's what we thought. So practically, it shouldn't really affect Arsenal. Again, it's just more interesting than anything else. And I'm just amazed that was never really included. I still can't figure out what would be the logic behind that outside of a specific targeting. It's very unusual. But yeah, big up Dow Square. Thank you, matey. Agree, not fit for purpose. It should not be taking that long to do it. Suggests lack of trust from the Premier League about what City was sending them, maybe, but that wouldn't surprise me, says Matthew. Maybe. But, I mean, regardless of the level of trust, it should not be taking a year to deal with from trying to enter into a contract. The 12-month period is insanity. The level of back and forth is staggering. It's clearly a bloated level of bureaucracy that's going on here. This case is now done, Ronnie Rave. In terms of the judgment, yes, it's not closed in terms of potential repercussions for the Premier League and Manchester City. So let's maybe get into that now, because this is maybe the interesting thing, or certainly the most interesting thing from a City perspective anyway. Because in the judgment, once again, it's like a neutral legal people, by the way. This is not like City saying this. The Premier League's decision with regards to the Etihad transaction was reached in a procedurally unfair manner because the Premier League did not give City an opportunity to respond to the benchmarking analysis prior to reaching its decision. The Premier League's decision with regard to the first Abu Dhabi bank transaction was reached in a procedurally unfair manner and must be set aside because the Premier League did not provide City prior to the final determination with the data bank transactions entered into by other clubs. So that doesn't mean that these agreements are now immediately approved because they still have to abide by fair market value. That's not what this means. But there is now, I think, going to be a question of City will now try to prove and argue their case that, well, ultimately these were fair market value, and moreover, your incompetence has cost us damages in that respect. So City will attempt, it seems, or they'll certainly have the right to attempt to illustrate that they have lost out, which I think is really, really interesting. Again, that City might have a very strong case. Sorry, City might have a case in terms of proving that the Premier League unfairly, unjustly prevented them from entering into these deals, or rather either at all or in a certain time frame, which is very, very interesting. As I say, interesting is the word for me, because we don't fully know yet what City are going to do. We don't know how the Premier League will react. We don't know what the actual amendments are going to be. So still a lot of speculation and guesswork here, lads. No one really has all the answers. So But again, it's just, I'm staggered that is a thing. And again, the hilarity that in terms of the Abu Dhabi Bank and Emirates Palace transactions, the Premier League breached their own rules in respect of unreasonable delays. That is amazing. And the fact that it's just so funny because, and maybe City have had unreasonable delays, but the Premier League have consistently had a go at City in respect of unreasonably delaying the situation. We have objective evidence here, a legal judgment that the Premier League breached its own rules in respect of unreasonable delays. That is so funny to me, given the context of everything else that's been happening. And maybe City have done the same in respect to the 115. Maybe they have, and maybe they'll get punished for it. But the fact that we know in absolute terms that the Premier League have like, I was going to say shat their own pants. I don't even know what that analogy is, but you know what I mean. Maybe you don't. I don't know. Yeah, you said it. I mean, it is stagger to actually specify the region of the world is a bit mad, to be honest. Oh dear. Geordies will be very angry, hilariously bad. Again, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be disgusted. Yeah, man's no correlation with the 115, absolutely. Newcastle owe us and should, yeah, exactly. Give us Bruno G. I think the only precedent it will set is one of incompetence from a Premier League perspective. But in terms of like anything practical, I don't think so personally. Maybe it gives, as a City fan, it gives me a boost because clearly the Premier League are an incompetent institution. That's all I can really conclude. Thank you, Darsko. Stan Kroenke is the owner of KSC's company, which owns Arsenal. Yes, indeed. Yes, so that I imagine that will just get converted into equity, and it won't really be an issue for Arsenal. But again, it is fascinating everything that's been going on today. No impact in my view. These FFP restrictions are weakening the Premier League in the bigger picture. Teams that want to win things aren't allowed investments to improve and sustain it. It is sort of like a what's the word? It's maybe being taken for granted that the Premier League is the best in the world in terms of like an entertainment money-making perspective. Part of the reason, well, the reason why it is the best in that respect, in terms of like viewership and numbers, and therefore the Premier League making money, is because of the amount of investment which is allowed. You know, you've even got the lesser clubs spending a lot of money. So if we do have a situation where there is a big restriction on spending, then you do have a very good point. Another league might take over, and then the league as a whole will suffer because the best players won't want to come here. So it is a very good point. There you go. You've already preempted it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like someone has got to lose their job over this because this is really embarrassing. Whoever approved that legal advice, which said that where the legal advice said this isn't 100% guaranteed to be impervious to challenge. Whoever signed off on that has got to be asked some serious questions. Surely. Indeed, Alec. Yeah. Dearie me. Now City has asked for Golden Premier League trophy to complete the set. Why would the Premier League breach their own rules? Are they stupid? Says Fuscon. Well, it wasn't a case of being stupid. It's just a case of taking too long. And again, this is what we went back to earlier, where it's just an administrative mess and a nightmare. Again, you don't have to read all of the statement, but I would recommend. I dropped the link earlier. I would recommend just reading. If I'm going to try to give you like exact bits. The back and forth in respect of I think it's the first deal, or maybe it's the second deal where it's like an absolute farce. Where it's like, is this fine? No. Is this fine now? No. Is this fine now? No. Is this fine now? Yeah, okay, it's fine. I think it was the second one. Which was the first Emirates Palace, was it? I believe. Emirates Palace. Was it that one? Yeah. So they tried to enter into it on the 20th of April 2023. The Premier League issued a final determination. the transaction was above fair market value. It reconsidered that determination and concluded it no longer considered the transaction to be evidently not at fair market value. The time taken to resolve this question is the subject of a complaint by Manchester City. So there was correspondence in May of 2023, still going through in June 2023. City then had to provide further clarification. In August, they wrote to the Premier League saying this is taking too long. Only after that complaint did the regulatory team send the report to the board recommending the transaction was above fair market value. So only after City lodged the complaint with them, they went back and reviewed it. Nielsen with the regulatory team provided a further report. Between August and September, City requested further information about the rejection of it. It wasn't given until the 18th of September, so 10 days after, when they requested an extension of time. So they didn't reply until the 23rd of November. In February of 2024, the regulatory team sent its report to the board with a fair market value recommendation, slightly adjusted to reflect further information provided by City. Nielsen studied the report and raised further questions. And again, they said it's above fair market value. So City had to provide more information. And it wasn't decided until April that actually, guys, it's fine. So that level of administration is mental to me. Shame on every club that voted for APT, on every club that neglected to challenge it. Can City ask for a vote of no confidence in the hierarchy? Says Colin, or someone's head's got to roll, surely. You would think. Sponsorship money coming up, maybe get us Bruno G. Sadly, it's not that simple. Is there a club that you're surprised snitched on us? Yeah, West Ham. What are you playing at, lads? Come on. I thought we were cool, man. I thought we were cool. That was a shame. I don't know what Wolves are doing though. Because aren't their owners quite well off? I thought they would have loved that. But yeah, really, really odd situation. So the next question will be, what will Man City do? Will they be able to illustrate damages? Will this change the whole way that the APT administration system is done? Because it's so hard, as I've outlined. I mean, clearly by that back and forth, which ultimately just ended in, yeah, it's actually fine. I think someone mentioned it earlier. It just seems to maybe being born out of a lack of trust rather than anything else. Rather than anything like maybe quantifiable or objective. So really odd. Can we get some free points? Yeah, absolutely. Prem's been blatantly biased and transparent about the APT rules and how they're obviously aimed at Newcastle. They've also been incompetent about this trial. Fills me with hope. Absolutely. West Ham, Chester City's over. To be fair, I still think West Ham fans like us, but I'm not sure that the club like us clearly. Hence, they are testified against us, which is incredibly upsetting. Of course it is. But there we go, and there we have it. It is a thing. Who's tagging me in this? What is going on? I don't know. Who's messaging me as well? Who's messaging me? The swines. Anyway. Do we have 115 likes, lads? If not, I'm going to be very disappointed. Okay, we've got over 115 likes. I'll let you guys off. Everton lovers. Yes, so it was Everton supported us, and Chelsea supported us, and Newcastle supported us. I think Aston Villa supported us as well. These are clubs who, I believe, want to try to invest and want to try to better themselves. So I guess that would be the logic there. And you could maybe make the arguments that outside of, the clubs who already, who don't need to maybe try to rely on associated party transactions or whatever. The other ones maybe don't want to be put into a situation where they could spend their own money. So it's maybe separating camps in between those who are ambitious, and those who are either not ambitious or they just want the status quo to be preserved. I think that's maybe the camps that are being created in the Premier League. Like Bournemouth, for example, they maybe they wouldn't want to be put in a situation where they would be expected to spend that much money. That could be the thing. Potentially. There's too much conflation of ownership and fans, says Lou. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Although some fans do have the same mindset of their club, and they will go with their club no matter what. So there is also that. Any questions, guys, on anything we have discussed so far? Hopefully, I've tried to outline what the overall situation is. The fact that there were 3 deals that were up for grabs is pretty interesting. I think in the end, I think 2 were decided to be fair market value. I think certainly the Emirates Palace one, and I don't think the first Abu Dhabi Bank one was ever decided on. If I go to the final paragraph of that, the final determination was the transaction was not at fair market value, and as such, City was required to vary the transaction so it did not exceed fair market value. So I don't know what happened there. I don't know if, City, is that deal done? Or, did they vary it? Or is that still up in the air with first Abu Dhabi Bank? I'm not sure. But that's that one. The Emirates Palace one we have outlined and discussed. Etihad Aviation Group. What happened? What was the conclusion of that again? I've forgotten. The following calls respect to total value by over. What's that at least? The Etihad transaction, the determination was that it was at least in excess of fair market value. In its reasons, the board addressed the submissions which had been made by City and the evidence which City had provided. They worked extremely hard to meet the deadline. Oh, that's nice of them, isn't it? So it looks like that one might be up in the air also, potentially. The Series Club supported us. Chelsea, Chelsea, Everton, Newcastle, and Forest supporters. Yeah, big up to those lads. Honestly, I always liked them. Always liked them. They're the lads. Absolutely. It doesn't, Lynn. That information is redacted, I'm afraid. That would be very, very interesting, but for obvious reasons, the public doesn't get to see sight of those things, because otherwise that might, prejudice City's position or whatever. So sadly, those aren't revealed. But that would have been very interesting. So it doesn't give us the dates there to and from, nor does it give us the valuations either. I'd be very interested to see what the Premier League were alleging was unfair value and what City was saying it was. I'd be most interested to see what is the gap in valuation. So, were City saying it was a mentally high valuation? Was it twice as much? Or was it they were only a couple out? They were only out by a few million either way. Was it sort of splitting hairs? That would be really, really interesting. It would go to see a comparison to the timeframes for other teams and assessments. It would, Douglas. It would indeed. I don't have that information, sadly. That would be very, very, very interesting. The fact that one of them took a year to settle on and the conclusion was just what the starting point was is madness. It is mad. Newcastle should give us our 2 points back. Yeah, exactly. Bad day for law-breaking discriminators. Outrageous behaviour. My club would never. Yeah, mine would never do that. It's vile and disgusting, to be honest. I'd like to know how far out. Yeah, that would be the most interesting thing. I don't know if we're ever going to get that information. It's like with the CAS judgment as well. I don't think that gave specific values either in terms of what was being alleged. That would have been so interesting to see how much are you saying is being pumped in. That would be really, really fun But yeah, that's sort of like the TLDR of the situation, guys. I think that it's hopefully, again, because of the delays, hopefully this will lead to a total revamp of the manner in which the Premier League assess fair market value in terms of these APTs. It's obviously not going to eliminate the regulation of it, but hopefully it will shore it up and make it a more streamlined process and actually make it more fit for purpose. Maybe mistakes can now be learnt from the Premier League, and now they can hopefully speed it up, as I say. That procedural structural unfairness needs to be addressed, because that was one of the things that City were proven to be. That's one of the things they won on. And it might not lead to anything, but it is so funny that Premier League breached their own rules. That's sort of like the TLDR of today, guys. Very big in terms of impact, very big in terms of statement, but this isn't going to impact the 115. This isn't going to make it so that City can now spend £1 billion. This doesn't mean that the Premier League rulebook gets ripped up and it's anarchy, but it does raise a lot of questions. It means that the rules will need to change, of course, because they're literally unlawful. And there is a big question mark now in respect of, are City owed any damages from the Premier League? If so, how much? How much, if at all? That'll be another thing that City will, City will potentially argue. We're bigger than the league, yeah. Huge for City. It is a very big victory. Don't let anyone try to tell you otherwise. The Premier League has made themselves look like fools here and incompetent oafs. This is a big, embarrassing day for the Premier League, and it is a big victory for Manchester City, definitely. Of course, they didn't win on everything they wanted to win, but as we've discussed, you only really need to illustrate one of those things. Do I believe the Pep news? I mean, it's come from a source who has insider information in is it FPL Main Road? Is that what his name is? Is that what his name is? Let me have a look. Where's my tweet? Hello? Where's my bloody tweet? There we go. Yeah, FPL Main Road. So he does have connections, as I understand it. I don't know who, but you know, he always gets news early, for example. So someone at the club has told him that. So I'm going to live in a world of hope and believe it's correct and believe it is true. Premier League hierarchy to quit. 2-year deal sounds very fishy. Hey, maybe there'll be a thing. Maybe it'll be like, because it would be really, really bad for me if Pep left. I mean, it's going to be bad whenever he leaves, but I can only really see a massive summer next season for City. It looks like De Bruyne is going. I'd like to think that Walker will be going. I like, you know, sorry, but that's the situation. Bernardo might be going. Nunes, Kovacic, maybe Grealish. There are a lot of question marks about the squad. There are some areas of it which are getting older, of course. I feel like there does need to be a big revamp, and I don't want that big revamp to be done under the stewardship of a new manager as well. I think that's too much change too quickly. I would love it to have, you know, Pep sees in the new players and doesn't do a Fergie and doesn't leave the squad an absolute shit show where it needs to be, you know, totally rebuilt. He builds it up again and he leaves it in like a perfect situation for the next manager coming. That's what I would love to see. Abolish the Premier League and bring in an independent regulator. Who now decides the new APT cap? Will the government step in? I don't think so, Lenny. Again, I think it will just be a. I think it will be an amendment, but it will have to get reviewed, obviously. Is downplaying the significance, saying the interest-free shareholder loans is the most significant piece. It's the exact opposite. The shareholder loans isn't really that interesting to me when a club can just like put a system in place to make its equity, and therefore it doesn't really matter. So I don't really. I don't know how you can downplay it. This is a massive embarrassment for the Premier League, and it's a massive victory for City. Whether in consequence or like symbolism, this is a big embarrassing situation for the Premier League, and it paints them in a very bad light. If you read this document, it paints them as incompetent imbeciles for the most part. It is amazing. It is actually staggering. I mean, how poorly run this is. Do you want Vinny if he wins the league and has a very solid Champions League campaign? Definitely. After Pep, definitely. Why not? Pep signs for 2 years extension, yeah? That means that Vincent Kompany will have had 3 years at Bayern Munich. He wins the three-peat. You know, does well in the Champions League, gets knocked out to us in the semi-final, whatever, you know, good on you. And then we take him. Boom. Sorted. That's the ideal situation. The ideal situation. The so-called loan sounds more fishy than sponsor deals because it came from shareholders, so they can just not pay it back, which means free money to pump into the club. It is odd they thought that would be a fine thing to not include for a fair market value. When he said he was closer to leaving than staying, he meant in terms of time, like he was more than halfway through his time. Exactly, IDK. Exactly. Let's have him for another 5 years, I reckon. Yeah, look, a big up Herbal. I think he's ruined the Premier League's reputation, says Alec. Yeah, big up Herbal, absolutely. Yeah. It is. Anyone trying to downplay it, I don't know why you would downplay it. Because this is big. This is big. Just from a pure perspective of you lost and you breached your own rules. Hilarious. How are you going to breach your own rules? That's like when Boris Johnson breached his own COVID regulations. This is the level of oafs that we're talking about. Level of imbeciles that we're talking about. Madness. The Premier League are Boris Johnson confirmed. Confirmed. If Pep really extends, it'll be his last contract. I think that probably would be the case. The Citizen, yeah, but we need over 10 years. Come on, we need a dynasty begins with a decade. Yeah. Let's have that. And that'll be a lovely time had by all. Do we have any further questions or thoughts, lads and lasses, before we wrap up? Because I've not properly eaten any food today, apart from like some chicken sausages I had whilst on LNobbins, and I had to go eat. So, what do you guys... Sorry, do you guys have any other final thoughts or comments, etc., etc.? Absolutely. Breach their own unlawful rules, the dafty says beyond belief. Yeah, specifically rule E64 in respect of unreasonable delays. Staggering. Everton, Chelsea, Newcastle, Basel and Merseyside, London and the North East. Do we know if Villa and Forest testified with us? Forest definitely did. I think Villa did as well, maybe. I don't know. I know they didn't like these APT rules. I know that much. When are we proper spending cash again? Too much saving. Hopefully next summer, Fuscan, that will be a thing. New movie ideas, what? No, it's all Linny. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, like it is a 175 page document. I'll send the doc link again. It is a 175 page document, so I can't like go through. Has that sent? Hopefully that sent. I can't go through like everything that's been discussed, but hopefully I was able to touch on the main interesting bits of it. Excuse me. And hopefully like, you guys now know more about it. Also, yeah, don't if anyone tries to tell you that this isn't a very significant victory for City, then I don't even know what planet they're living on, to be honest. Yeah, it's you know, it's a thing. Thank you, glad to stream. Yeah, the document is there, guys. If you read along. Yeah, guys, let's start now. So Shall we start now? So, to be fair, whenever the judgment comes in for the 115, I think we are. I don't care how big the document is. I think we will have to do a read along for that. I don't care if that stream is 10 hours long. We have to do a section by section read along of that judgment. No, I feel like that's the only course of action. Manchester City Football Club, as its name suggests, a company whose business is football. No, we're not going to read it. Does it make me more confident? It makes me more confident that the level of opposition is worse than I thought it was. That's for sure. If I super chat £200, will you read the entire document now? Absolutely, Daniel. Absolutely, I will. But you won't. So it's not something to happen. Make it a subathon, says Jack. If it happens, Musty, can you imagine? If it happens, again, we will be there. It'll be like a 24-hour celebration stream. That's what it will be, because we'll finally, if we come through the other end and we beat all the main allegations, and it means that there's no points deduction, relegation, whatever. Even if it's like just like, you know, a slap on the wrist and like a fine, and we beat the main ones, then that's like a victory as far as I'm concerned, for obvious reasons. A few loans more, says Steve. That is funny how, again, there won't be any real repercussions, but the fact that City have managed to Uno reverse it onto other clubs is quite funny. 90k is not going to happen, so don't worry about it. That Pep press conference will send me to euphoria. The media would always twist things around regardless of results. The mutants would take it for granted and leave their lives unscathed. That's why if we win, we must sue. The media, says the citizen. You just want chaos and anarchy. Anarchy, sue fucking everyone. Rafan's yap about how we bribed the panel. Yeah, I mean, as long as we just like beat the main ones, then I'll be so chill. I'll be so chill. Can't wait for 115 and a commemorative shirt, says Sean. Is that what you're going to get? Great. Great stuff. Right, lads. Any final thought and lasses, sorry. Any final thoughts? Any final things? Please make sure you've liked the stream if you haven't already done so. We have had over 200 people here, which has been very, very lovely to see that you guys are interested in this sort of stuff. Oh, and obviously, if it affects City, why wouldn't you be interested? Why wouldn't you be interested? When you end your stream, can you please raid to the big 6? Steve is going to need us. Sure, I can do that. Yeah, I don't even know how to do that, but yeah, am I subscribed to the big 6? I think, oh no, I am, yes, there we go. So I can do it, okay, good. If they allow redirects anyway, I don't know if that's a thing, we'll find out. Man City closing down. Shut up. Which other shows do I do? I'm on the top 6 with the Football Terrace on Mondays, normally 6 till 8. That's the basic vibe. I'm on Mo's Rational League show, which is on Mondays from 2 till 3:30 and Fridays at the same time. I'm on LNobbins at 1 PM. And I also do my own shows and all that stuff. So that is where you can find me. And obviously on the Twitch, LNobbins as well, if you want even more of my content. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere. But yeah, overlap. Get me on if you want a City fan who will talk about all this shite and sort of half know what they're talking about. You know, only sometimes. Right, guys, part-timers, shut up. I'm literally I'm in this chair from 2 o'clock through to 8 o'clock minimum. Yeah, minimum. And I was asked to do A-listers by Hassam, which I would have liked to do, but I can't be sat here from 2 until 10 because I'm doing all that for free, by the way, for now. That's all for free. So I'm not even making my own content in that time period. So I can't commit all that time. So we'll be having less of that stuff. Musty, you swine. You swine. Right, guys. Yeah. Here's the big six. I'm going to redirect you because someone asked me to do that. Go let them know the Nobbins sent you. Say, I don't know what you can say. What should you guys say? Nobbins raid hashtag APT victory, something like that. I don't know. Go and do that. Go and do that in the comments. To like, you know, be happy that we won the APT situation today and show Big Steve some love, of course. Alec, what the hell, mate? It's not lazy. Oi, it is hard trying to be entertaining and talk about football for however long. And again, I'll repeat, I've not eaten any proper food yet. Anyway, guys. Go enjoy the Big Six. Have a lovely rest. I'll be back tomorrow at 12 for the Knobcast. Gasky won't be with me, but Tom Little will. So we won't be discussing City and United. We'll be discussing City and Liverpool at 12 p.m. tomorrow with Tom Little, as I say. So make sure to join me for that, chaps and chapettes. Until then, have a lovely rest of your evening. Thank you always for your support. Of course. I'll see you